Genesis chapter 6 verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man.
Noah was a
just man.
not unyore pasi pakanzi just. Noah munhu ndizvo. Atori munhu ane maoko anenge ako, ane brain dzinenge dzako. Antone vana, antone mukadzi, antodawo mukadzi. No, sezva unoita. But Mwari ndokutaura naye. But Noah wacho ari just
and perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with God.
Noah communed with God. Noah angari blameless, are righteous. And right now we are propagating a gospel that you can never be perfect. And yet we have one who has never died for, never cleansed with the blood of the lamb. But scripture says, even though he was a descendant of Adam, he was blameless and righteous. But Isusu, we justify sin on the basis of being born out of Adam. But it's natural not to be righteous. You teach your children to aspire to be pilots until they are pilots. You teach your children to aspire to become engineers, and they become knowledgeable in areas that were never possible for an African. They ultimately fulfill that purpose. But why is it today's church is afraid to talk about righteousness if Noah was righteous? Righteousness. Who are you preaching for? What is your inspiration? Is God your inspiration, or is your integrity that gives you the gospel to preach? Righteousness has to be taught in the church. Purity has to be taught in the church. Blamelessness has to be taught in the church. You are going to hell, my friend. I need the weak in the moon, so I can't survive. This is a big father. You're not going to big daddy, sugar daddy. You come to church and you still want your sugar daddy with you. My friend, there was Noah. He was blameless and righteous, just, communed with God, walked with God. And Noah existed before the death at Calvary of Christ. But still, he managed to be righteous in the midst of such an environment. He walked with God. He communed with God. Unotya kuparidza righteousness because unongotyika kuzoonekwa uine mumwe munhu asiri. Unotya kuparidza righteousness because unongochita apa mwechivi ndinogona kuzoita chivi mangwana. You are wicked. That heart is wicked. That's the deposit of the devil. Those are tares. We must preach righteousness. We must come against sin. We must come against missing the mark. We must stand firm as believers of Jesus Christ. Chero ndikafa ndichimira, chero ndikazonzi ndatadza mangwana, indatadza. Auziri watadza, vhangeri arichiji, pene kuti ndazotadza. The reason why we no longer go for righteousness is because the preacher was scared to preach about righteousness. The reason why we no longer go for purity is because the preacher was afraid to go for purity. The reason why we have stopped talking about holiness is because the preacher was afraid that there could be a point in his life where he will be compromised himself, and hence he would rather keep quiet when it comes to issues of holiness. And hence now people commit adultery and they are comfortable coming to church. And this is what usauye kana uri muadultery. Ndikuti kana wauya ukaona kuregedza kuchikunetsa uri pandiri, tsvaga pamwe pane chiedza chinoita kuti uregedze chivi, nokuti tese tinotoziva kuti adultery chivi. Ukaona kudevelopa a character, a sinner's character, because it's one thing to commit sin and it's another to be a sinner. When you are going to church for years and you remain a sinner, we've got a problem. Come with your sin and we stop the sin. We stop the missing of the mark. Why is it now we are so conscious of the missing of the financial mark rather than the holiness mark. Do I not preach giving? I preach giving. But it seems like we are so conscious about missing the mark when it comes to everything else. Unetsika dzatakasiya dziri muchechi tikatya kutaura nezvadzo. Zvakanakira ndezvekuti handizirini ndichasarudza achapinda. Yandiri kuparidza panapa ndo kutosanangura, kutosiyanisa, kutopandla together, kutoseparata. So pamunenge muchiimba kuti wauya mucheki mukuru, munofanira kuziva kuti kune vanotungamira, vanofanira kuunganidza, kuitira kuti kucheka kuite nyore. Ndisu vacho vakomana ngatiregei zvivi, vakomana ngatiregei zvakaipa, ngatitsvagei uchene, ngatitsvagei purity, ngatitsvagei holiness, kuitira kuti chipiriso ichi, this living sacrifice, may bring out an odor, a sweet incense, a smell that is pleasing to the Father. Who will celebrate being intimate with a mad person? It's not intimacy, it's witchcraft. And yet it's the same act that shows love. Because when you get married, you go for intimacy. So on the love platform, it's meaningful. But on this platform, it's wickedness, and yet it's the same act. So chindiudza inini kuti chipiriso chemhombwe anochida here, kana kuti witchcraft is an abomination before him. But we don't talk about these things. Who would drink milk from an unclean vessel? Why do we want to give God this milk? Why do we want to give God this worship? We have allowed as preachers for people to become unclean vessels, and we still ask them to give to God. No philosophy zangu zandinofamba nazo, no opinion yandinayo. We must go for purity. We must go for righteousness. We must go unto Jesus with clean hearts. Ngatichagei Jesu nemoyo unorevesa. Ngatichagei Jesu nemoyo wechokwadi. Saka chiimagine kuti vagara vatotaura kuti ndiri kuda vanondinamata in spirit and in truth. So truth becomes a foundation. Spirit becomes a positioning. You can never be in spirit and in truth when you are unclean. When you are unclean. So if ever you are going to go before God, we can never be perfect. No one is perfect. Then what use is Calvary if Noah was just and righteous? Calvary, as preachers, we are rendering his death a nullity and making Christianity a laughing stock. What we call power these days is not even power. What we call communion these days is not even communion. What we call conviction in these days is cohesion. Kwatinoti kumuda ndo madira munongoita mashuga date. Kwatinongoti ndo kumuda ndo madira munoita ma small house. Kwatinoti kumuda ndo madira munongoita mari. Where do we draw the line, the difference between loving God and loving everything else? Ndiana nodiwa newe mukadzi wako kana Mwari? Uzandipindure zvipindure wega. Would you die for God, or you would rather die for your husband? You would rather die for your wife? You would rather die for your children? Asandaona vashoma vandaona inini who are ready to lose everything like Job and still worship him the same. I can almost tell before the death of your children that the death of your children would destroy your Christian walk. Udzingwa would destroy your Christian walk. So I don't need you to lose your job. I don't need you to lose your children. I can almost tell. Munoda zvinhu kupfuura iye, munoda vana venyu kupfuura iye, munoda mabasa enyu kupfuura iye. Adei muchakohwa. Now I preach is 2 days. And yet he talks about the parable of the sower. Kuti mbeu yakadyarwa parukangarabwe. Ivhangeri yakashumirwa kune vanhu vane moyo yakaoma. Ivhangeri yakashumirwa kune vanhu vane compromised DNA. Yakangonodai sombichana ndobva zvapera. Tibuda pagedhere pachechi apa akudzokera to the old self. Achienda kumba kwavo achisvika kumba akutofona kuti muri papi ndiuye.